I'm Brian Lovell. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a co-principal investigator with the Best Center and the president of the Association of Controls Professionals. And joining me today is Candace Haynes, who is our outreach coordinator and director for the Association of Controls Professionals. And we'll be talking about some outreach and engagement techniques and strategies, particularly for younger audiences. And so with that, Candace, would you like to advance? Okay. So the agenda for this presentation, we'll be talking about defining a target audience and population. We'll talk about the things that potential students might want to know about your program. We'll discuss some low-cost strategies for gaining attention, strategies for consistent engagement, and then we'll summarize and be sure to leave some time for question and answer. One of the biggest things, before we advance the slide here, Candace, one of the biggest things that we're seeing in programs around the country, and having been a program director myself, is getting students into your program. Now, traditionally, what we've seen in Best Center participants is we don't have really a very difficult time getting in-field folks or non-traditional students into our programs. But a lot of times we have difficulty reaching out to younger learners, making them aware of our industry, and engaging them in such a manner that encourages them to learn more about the field and then come and talk to us or hopefully enroll in our programs. So Candace Haynes has done a fabulous job for us at the Association of Controls Professionals in a national outreach and engagement strategy, particularly for young people who speak, let's just face it, who speak a different language, have different interests than folks that look like me with very little hair. So I'm going to let Candace do most of the presenting today. But Candace, if you just go ahead and advance one slide, I'll kick it off a little bit here and then introduce her. Okay, so the first thing that you've got to do is define a target audience. And Candace, I'm going to let you speak. I know I love to talk here, but I'm going to let you speak and take us through these slides. I think my experience as a program director in a building automation program at Georgia Piedmont Technical College is that we did not get a whole lot of support reaching the audience which we needed to reach. We did a great job of reaching folks who were in field by word of mouth. We built our program on that and had good success that way, but we really never cracked that nut as far as reaching young folks really effectively and pushing a message and making them understand the opportunities that are available to them in building automation systems and other STEM fields. I don't want to limit it to building automation. ACP has been fortunate enough to get funding from the Siemens Foundation to leverage its work in the building automation industry and BAS-related STEM fields in an engagement, a national engagement and outreach effort to really get young people to listen and to be aware of BAS and other high-tech STEM careers that probably they had not heard of before. So with that being said, the absolute expert in our organization in doing this is Candace Haynes. And Candace Haynes came to us with an interesting background. She's a dancer, she's an actress, she's a fabulous producer, and she knows how to engage young people in pushing a message. So she's been absolutely amazing at crafting our outreach strategies, and I'll let her share some of those with you. But with no further ado, I'll turn over the presentation at this point to Candace Haynes.
Thanks so much, Brian. And you already know, Brian, whenever you want to interject or say anything, I'm ready to hand over the whole presentation to you because I look at you as well as an expert. Because a lot of people don't know that Brian actually had this idea one day when he realized that, I don't want to say a disconnect, but there needed to be a stronger bond from these traditional learners all the way through these professionals and these employers. And Brian said, how can we do this? So I cannot take credit. I always say this, that Brian is the brains behind the operation, and this is where we are. And what I'd like to do is just take a minute today and just give you guys a little bit of our digital and in-person strategies that, as Brian mentioned, we implement here at ACP. So first and foremost, the most important thing we believe would be defining the target audience. That is so key. and benefiting not only the audience that you're reaching out to, but internally, just with your organization. It's going to definitely cut out a lot of time and be able to give you a more focused strategy with your messaging efforts. So, what we've started to do in order to be effective with our efforts, and also things that you all can do and relate in your recruitment campaigns, is you want to list out all your stakeholders. And what we've done is we have four groups here at ACP of our stakeholders. The first group being K through 12 academics, the second one, the post-secondary academia, third being workforce, and the fourth being agencies, governments, and organizations. And what we've done from there is we go in the audiences, the stakeholders that I just mentioned, the groups, those groups then dictate the elements of our outreach strategies. So, with this pandemic, it's been very interesting for all of us, I'm sure. And what we've done is we started out having our outreach efforts pretty much 90% in person. And we were on a roll, on fire, really engaging these stakeholder groups, really engaging these audience members. And then the pandemic happened. And so now 90% of our outreach efforts, or maybe about 80%, is virtual, is digital. And so what we've done is re-strategize our outreach efforts, and we've taken these stakeholder groups, we've done the research, and now we understand that these stakeholder groups, for example, K through 12 academia, most of these stakeholders engage specific to specific social media platforms. And so these platforms, for example, middle school students, one of the audiences that ACP targets, they are heavily on TikTok, as well as Snapchat, as well as Instagram. And then you move to post-secondary academia, where you have our Facebook goers, and then our workforce is really heavily focused in LinkedIn. And then finally, you have our agencies and organizations and community members heavily focused on LinkedIn. We also have found that one of our strategies, our baseline strategies, is that these stakeholders, all of them are heavily engaged in YouTube. So YouTube is the hub for all of the information, for our outreach and engagement, where we go and produce all of our content. And then we take that content, and that's where we go and we disseminate it out to all of our stakeholders on these specific platforms. And so from there, maximizing efforts through leveraging your audience influencers. From there, our goal here at ACP, and what we like to focus on and also encourage, whether you're an instructor or whether you are fitting into one of these different stakeholder groups yourselves, the idea here is to maximize your efforts through leveraging these audience influencers. So, who are your audience influencers? What you'd like to do here is you want to collaborate with these stakeholders, and you want to share each other's content. We've realized and really went through this past couple of months of really enjoying this collaborative engagement with some of our partners and our stakeholders. And from there, our audience reach just expanded tremendously. And if you engage in some of those practices, you will also see that your audience reach will expand as well. And I'll pause there, Brian, if you have anything to add to target audience.
No, I'd go ahead, and I'm sure you're going to discuss our STEM champions, so I'll just tee you up for that one.
Absolutely. So moving right along, potential students, what do they want to know? And so studies show that these students, these traditional learners, right, coming out of high school, they feel more prepared into going into colleges and a little bit less prepared in understanding and knowing what career field it is that they want to go into. And so there are two things that I believe if we focus on with our recruitment and retention efforts, This will assist and aid these students in having a clear focus and being able to direct their focuses in determining which institutions, which programs best fit with what's relevant in their lives at the time. So, what number one, to help students figure out which careers match their interests and abilities, creating content, informing them about that information helps them to make informed decisions. And then two, to help them understand the steps they need to take in order to have the career that they want. And so at ACP, we take those two broad categories and we create all of our content with the list that you're viewing on this PowerPoint. We take these questions and we convert it into content. We convert it into these posts and these engaging questions and surveys and events so that by going through an interactive experience, these students are learning the things that they want to know. So some of which employment prospects, the daily life as an industry professional, average rate of pay upon graduation, length of the program, cost of the program, courses required to graduate, financial aid opportunities, scholarship opportunities, internship opportunities. Those three are really key that we found once we've targeted our stakeholders, once we determined who are we to partner with. For example, Georgia Piedmont Technical College, we partner with our partner institutions and we work with their recruitment departments and they assist us and aid us on our different events so that they're also giving the professional expertise, the in-person real-time answers to these students' questions about financial aid scholarships and internships. Most of the time, students just want to know, what's my next step? Where do I go? What's the best college? How do I get there? And so if you don't necessarily have that expertise, one thing we encourage is that you work with your different stakeholders, your partners within your network to provide that information and create engaging content. And then first count account stories of current students and graduates, which will go in a little bit deeper momentarily, equipment inside the lab. So some of the photos that you're viewing are visuals of a building automation systems laboratory. What we've done is we've created virtual lab tours where we partner up with our partner institutions and we have either their media team or our media team will go in and we will record these videos where we're discussing these questions that these students want to know. And we're talking to these professors and instructors and we're asking the questions and we're going around the lab and visually showing these students what they can expect and signing up for these particular courses. So all in all, what these students want to know, it's important. It's up to us to really determine, number one, what's our audience? Number two, now that we know K through 12, these high school students, this is what they want to know. How can we create these questions into engaging content that gives them the answer that they want to listen to? I'll pause there, Brian.
It's a great summary, Candace. And I know with the number of repeat Best Center participants on this webinar that we've talked about a lot of these things in the past, but I wanted to highlight a couple things that you mentioned. Number one, the success that you've had in partnering with the media departments and the recruitment departments of colleges like GPTC or Georgia State or Roxbury, others that you've worked with, and how critical that is to give that support, both from just the print materials, which is kind of the old school way, but you've done such a great job of doing the short run podcasts and chopping those up and then presenting those also in a way that can answer these questions and then be leveraged and multiplied. In my mind, it's a multiplicative effect. You kind of work with the colleges. The colleges then have the framework and the distribution to get it out to the potential students in a way that they can digest it. So I just wanted to summarize that because to me, that's a critical element of actually answering these questions and getting in front of the students who need to hear it.
Absolutely. It's all about us connecting the dots. If you have an idea, if you know of the content that these students need to understand, it's about going directly to the source to get that information directly into in front of the students. Absolutely. And
And
I'll add
if
to
I could
that
say,
too.
I'm
Absolutely.
sorry, Candace, could I say one more thing? For all of
Absolutely.
you on the call here, I don't want to put a bunch of work on your plate, Candace, but Candace runs a podcast on a regular basis, and she's always looking for folks, particularly in the BAS or BAS STEM related fields, to interview. And so she's interviewed some in the Best Center Network and would be, I'm sure, interested in interviewing a number more of you and then allowing you to use that perhaps as content, which then you can push out to the folks who are interested in your program or should be interested in your program. So I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that too, Candace. Thank you.
Absolutely. And moving right along, we have our low cost strategies for gaining attention. So, one thing that we noticed once we sort of made that transition into mainly going digital with our outreach, with our retention and recruitment efforts in your case, we looked at our brand. We had to really start from the base and say, is what we are projecting the content, is it appealing to our specific target audiences? And so, yes, it was appealing to our workforce department. It was appealing towards our agencies and some of our ambassadors, but that younger audience, we had to look at our brand and we said, okay, how can we create something that's going to be more engaging? And the things that we did was we created brighter images, more animation within our presentations during our in-person live events, which one of the examples, this is some of our crew tech from Dunwoody High School, one of our in-person events in this picture. um, it was amazing at this event. We had the opportunity to actually engage with their theater crew department in order to host and achieve our A Step in STEM musical and event. And so going there, having, for example, this photo booth, that's what we call this picture with the backdrop. We had an engaging photo booth, and then we had a musical, and we have Art in the corner here, bottom left corner. He's our automation recruitment technician. And so wherever we went, however we branded ourselves, wherever we pushed any content, whether it was virtual or in person, he was going along with us. And any student in middle school and high school knew that when they saw this logo, he was going to assist them and have information for these students in order to give them information about their specific career pathway interests into STEM careers. So, number one, rebranding the recruitment campaign, looking back and seeing what can we do to appeal to these younger audiences. Also, determining your hook messaging. This correlates directly with your audiences. Um, I'm referring back to the stakeholder list. These hook messages, um, they're readily available messages and answers to these more common questions that your audiences have, that you're able to pull out at any moment and share again in an engaging way to your particular audiences. Also, these hook messages, what we intended ultimately on producing what we wanted to see produced by utilizing these hook messages, we wanted to increase our conversion rates on social media. So what that looks like is we put out a message for our K through 12 students and we say, this particular STEM career, building automation systems, is a very relatable and exciting career. So that may be a hook message to a high school senior. And there, we add a call to action button that says, click here to learn more, or click here to subscribe to our newsletter, or click here to receive additional tools and resources that can help you learn what particular STEM career is exciting to you, is what you're ultimately wanting to pursue post high school. And so having those higher conversion rates, those will naturally come, but it really stems from hooking those audiences with your hook message. And then cultivate a community. ACP, what we decided to do as we rebranded our project, which is called the A Step in STEM Project, Automation Skills Training and Promotion in STEM. What we did was we coined terms to define the various stakeholders who are going to be the legs of our operation, who are going to go and promote this program. And so some of these terms include the STEM champions that Brian was mentioning earlier. These STEM champions are parents, our counselors, our teachers, principals, even the PE teacher at these various middle schools and high school levels. What we've done is we went inside these schools and we ultimately determined a point of contact or a few point of contacts. And from there, they all became STEM champions and assisted us with our programming. Another coined term is student champions, as well as our ACP ambassadors. So our student champions, those students you'll see, as Brian mentioned before, they'll be giving us their story counts on our podcast, as well as our student success stories. They'll be giving the students who will be listening and viewing these videos step-by-step processes into how they decided which career, which STEM career was most exciting and appealing to them, and how they determine what their next steps are in pursuing that career. And last but not least, the ambassadors. What we've done here is coined that term, which transitions into defining this digital and in-person media outreach strategy. And so our ambassadors, those are our, I love the term champions because they really are champions. They are on fire for the program and they are connectors. They're connecting us with various affiliates as well as even potential opportunities for us to grow our brand as well. And so we encourage you all to cultivate a community, coin some terms within your various organizations that creates a sense of community and give this community very specific purposes and goals and how they're able to help their immediate surroundings as well. And last but not least, defining the digital and in-person media outreach strategy. Ultimately, we've like to separate this strategy into an internal strategy and an external strategy. Very simple. The internal strategy determines the logistics of your strategy. So who, what, where, when, and why, the point of contacts of these various stakeholders and audiences. Also, what will be included in the FAQs of our campaign, similar to the questions of the previous slide of what the students want to know. Create FAQs for each of your audiences so that for students who enjoy just having all of that information right in front of them, they're able to have that readily available on your website. And also creating things like an editorial calendar and all other necessary tools that you need in order to produce engaging content for your various audiences. And then the external plan, of course, is pushing and promoting your messaging. And more specifically, I would say pushing and promoting it even to media outlets. Once you feel that you've gained and gotten to a certain level of understanding your audiences and understanding your strategy, then this external digital and in-person outreach will extend to these media outlets where you're going to make your goals relevant to local and national media outlets in assisting and spreading awareness of your recruitment efforts. And I have a call to action down below. If you guys would like to email me, I'll have our contact information at the end of the slide as well. But email me, Candace at acprofessionals.org, visit our booth and subscribe to our newsletter. And we provide lots of these tools and resources through our bi-monthly newsletter. And I'll pause there, Brian.
And just a quick one, Connie. Connie Keene asked the question, where can she get to your podcast? And I know we're gearing up for a scaling effort in our website to contain chat rooms and the podcast content, which we've already created. But in the interim, Candace, where could Connie, should she just email you, or could she
Oh,
go somewhere else for the podcast?
absolutely. So we have a link that goes directly to our YouTube page on our booth here in this expo. And if it's easier to just go to YouTube and look up the Association of Controls Professionals, you'll see our recent and some of our later podcast episodes. And definitely stay tuned for more episodes. We intend on producing a lot more in 2021 and beyond, coming up very soon. Any other questions or comments, Brian?
I don't see any right now, but we'll hit some at the end. We've got about 5 more minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Perfect. So let's wrap all of this up. I've been using that word engagement, engagement, engagement. What does that mean, really? And it means so many different things. And I can't stress it enough that all of the information I'm providing during this presentation is so intertwined. And it all starts again with knowing your audience. So the specific types of engagement that you determine, the audience determines the specific types of engagement that you promote. And so, what I want to go over are just some of the things that, again, ACP, we're doing in order to increase our engagement. We're hosting these in-person events. As I mentioned, this photo on this slide is actually at our launch. Those are our A Step in STEM castmates. And what we like to promote here is that all of these cast members are involved in STEM in some way. And after they present their musical that discusses a high school student's journey into learning more about themselves, as well as the steps that it takes in order to pursue a career at a technical institution, we have a wonderful panel discussion, and that's where these actors are able to go deeper into their personal stories. And what's key here is that, again, students are seeing, number one, other students or other people who look like them. As Brian mentioned, sometimes the messaging is a lot more effective. Again, knowing your audience, we're speaking about that K through 12 academics. Sometimes that message is a lot more effective when the students can truly relate, and the messenger is reflected and looks similar to the students. And so some of these students here have been through a building automation systems program. They have their degree there, as well as one of our castmates here is a coder, and the list goes on. And so you can just imagine how the students light up once they are aware that, are you trying to tell me that I can have a wonderful, exciting life and enjoy the same excitement in STEM? So really connecting the two is key for that particular audience. Also, the virtual events, as we mentioned, we host webinars, we host expo events, as we are now, as well as Instagram and Facebook Live. Sometimes students just want to know what's happening behind the scenes. Sometimes it's very effective if a teacher just turns on a camera and talks about their day and talks about maybe what the students are going through and what they're learning. That's very effective in this level of engagement. And also some of the other events that we have that we host are our STEM Champion workshops, where we actually take these teachers and counselors through various presentations and give them tools and resources that they can then take back to their classroom and engage their students at that level as well. So connect with community and industry leaders. We talked about some of those terms, our STEM champions, our student champions, and our ambassadors. But here, how we like to connect with them again through the newsletter, as well as through monthly meetings and discussions. And then lastly, the student champions, we like to connect with them by keeping updated with their information and having them provide their stories and updates at the various levels of their journey for their pursuit of a STEM career. Last but not least, promoting a visual storytelling. We talked about the podcast and also the student success stories. Both of these are exceptional tools to really getting these students to relate and to connect, and really be able to visually and have that emotion evoked upon them to encourage them to, if nothing else, take the next step and inquire about what they've learned and what they've heard in that particular video. And what I want to do really quickly is show just a brief.
Okay,
Yep.
Candace, I don't think we have time for that. We've got about 8 minutes. So,
Okay.
but I wanted to make one comment here, and then we have a couple questions already to take. As you're looking at the screen, just to bring attention to what you mentioned because it's so powerful. All of these, for all you attendees here, these strategies all center on communication. Direct communication is the best, but some form of deep, engaging communication is critical to getting students vested in what you're trying to tell them. If you look at the folks on the screen who are on the stage, all of them are actors, actresses, but they're all also in STEM. And so at the end of that show, as Candace mentioned, it was so powerful because they brought music and entertainment and very engaging program. And then they sat down and talked about two of them graduated from BAS programs. One of them, the young lady on the right, is a representative with IBM, and she just loves to engage with STEM issues. The gentleman in the center is a science teacher in the DeKalb County School District. So I say that to say getting the right people and then getting them in front of your students. And when we get past COVID, we have a whole team of folks just like this in an automated box truck. And we had many shows lined up for Memphis and Boston and Miami and others, and some on the West Coast. And we'd love to work with a number of your institutions to bring this show to your location and really mass students together and then push the message. But Candace, we have 3 questions to answer here, and I think we've only got 5 minutes, so we better jump into them.
Absolutely.
Larry Chang is asking, can we share part of the Step and STEM recording with the audience? Or do we have something that we could share with them that encapsulates what a Step and STEM is?
Yes.
Not now, but later. Sorry.
Right. If we absolutely connect with us on our YouTube channel, and you'll see a Georgia State workshop, you'll be able to understand and visualize what the Step and STEM events in person will encompass.
And then, thank you. And Peter Crabtree's asking, how do you measure results? And have you been able to see results? And I can just speak anecdotally, Peter, from my perspective, and I'm going to turn over to Candace, but when we've done this at high schools and massed students in auditoriums, anywhere from 9th to 12th grade, after they're engaged with the performance, I've been amazed at how pointed the questions are about and how much they're truly thinking about their future. Whereas in the past, when I've gone and just tried to talk as a talking head and say, you know, you should do this and you know, you should do that, nobody listens to me, young people anyways. And it could be debatable if other people listen to me, but certainly young people don't listen to me, but they listen to somebody like Candace who comes to them with, or in the space where they're at. And Candace, I'd like you to field a little bit of that response too. Have you seen results? And have you been able to measure those results?
Absolutely. It varies. I'll start by answering this really quickly by saying that where we are in our process in receiving results is we are so engaged in the messaging and promoting equitable education and really getting these students hooked. We're sort of still in the hook space where we've noticed that in this hook level, first phase, if you will, some students immediately are ready to convert and say, I want to proclaim this particular STEM career as my field of focus. Now, to get them to actually sign up for the institutions, go to the schools, we're also seeing what's going to take for that to occur, for us to see those hard numbers of an increase in enrollment, is consistently promoting and pushing this information with these students. And that's what we intend on doing. So I say, with Brian's comment, we've seen wonderful excitement. We've seen excellent feedback, not just from the students, but the STEM champions and ambassadors, as well as even some of our institutions. We've had some of the students who've attended our events even reach out directly to these professors. And so I would say, as long as we're focused and doing the work, the results will absolutely come. And I'm really excited to see what's next for specifically the building automation systems industry, as well as related STEM fields there.
Yeah, Peter, and also we've measured, we get real-time feedback from the students with Kahoot. So we know and we can see, and then we also can measure how they're responding. But because of COVID, it's been hard. The real raw numbers of increases in students in seats has been difficult to measure during this time. And then one more question from Peter. Candace, are there particular strategies that you've found particularly effective, which colleges can replicate?
Absolutely. I would say the virtual lab tours, um, really having that personable experience with that instructor, and then also having as many story accounts as possible of successful stories of professionals within the industry. But also, if these professors or if these institutions are able to connect with students who are already on track and pursuing these particular STEM careers, having those stories captured are extremely effective. Again, having the students listen to other students to portray these messages.
I'd like to add one more thing with the 2 minutes we have left. Candace recently produced a podcast. It was really poignant. I mean, there were 4 young men, African American, 3 of them BAS graduates, who were in Boston building a laboratory for Boston urban young students, building a BAS laboratory up there and reflecting upon how they viewed, and these are young guys, how they viewed the importance of that work in bringing up minority communities in inner cities. And by the way, they were doing it just 2 blocks away from, or maybe 1 block away from where Malcolm X grew up. So when some of the board members of that institution of Roxbury watched that video, it brought some of them to tears. And so that also just gets back to what Candace mentioned about the importance of storytelling. I think that's one of the most effective ways that we've seen, telling a moving story that really has meaning, that can be tied back to technical education, has been huge for what we've done. So, Candace, do you have any closing comments?
I just want to say that is the key here for this particular audience, K through 12, is to look at it as who's connected to the audience. And so, although we're creating engaging content, these storytelling that the K through 12, these traditional high school students will appeal to, we also want to make sure we're giving the necessary tools and resources to their parents, to their counselors. We have to, as a community, come together and educate the influencers who are around these students. And so I want to encourage us to do that as well. Encourage everyone on this call to, as Brian mentioned, connect with us. I would love to have you be a guest, a professional guest on our podcast. And it was just such an honor, such a pleasure to be speaking with you all. I wish this was in person, but you all have a wonderful rest of your experience with the expo. And Brian, I'll send it back to you. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Candace. You did a wonderful job, and I put you on the spot for this, but you did a wonderful job. And I know this content is very important to all of the listeners, because one of the most important things is having students to teach. And in this time, that couldn't be more true, hopefully coming out of COVID soon. And one more thing, Sean Huberty is your next story. So he said he's got a wonderful story for you to share. And Jenny Brinker also, it looks like she just said hello. I think you've interviewed her also. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you got something out of this. We certainly did. And if you want any more information, please don't hesitate to send us an email. Thanks again.